praise the Lord, because after 2 long weeks without a new episode, Riverdale is finally back. Happy dance time! What's up, you lovely people, and welcome back to What Happened, where today's subject is Riverdale Episode 8, titled The Outsiders. Now in this episode, some big secrets are revealed, and Paulie finally decides where she's going to live. So let's dive in. After Jughead's usual voiceover to start the episode, we see Sheriff Keller sitting in the Lodge's apartment, or penthouse, talking to Paulie, and she's explaining everything that went on with Jason, like how he was going to fake his own death, they were going to run away together, everything like that. Betty then brings up the drugs and is like, why did Jason have drugs? And Paulie explains it was just a one-time thing, because they needed money to start over. Jason made a deal with the Southside Serpents, or she says some biker gang, but it's the Southside Serpents, to deliver some drugs to an address upstate. Of course, those were the drugs that were found in Jason's car that went up in flames with everything, including Nana's ring. Now I'm sitting here kind of curious, why of all the things that she brought up in the car did she bring up the ring? I have a feeling like maybe this will come back in a later episode to be important, because of course, thanks to Nana in a previous episode, we know that Mrs. Blossom had quite an attachment to that ring, and she even said something about how Mrs. Blossom might cut Paulie's finger off if she knew that she had that ring. After this, we then head to Archie's room, where he is playing video games with Jughead, and apparently, as expected, it smells ripe with teen boy sweat. And then Fred reveals that tomorrow is a big day, so he needs to get some sleep because they're finally going to break ground on the old drive-in, and he apologizes to Jughead, saying, he knows that this kind of must be hard for him because he knows what that place meant to him. And then Jughead just goes, you know what, it's okay as long as you build something beautiful in its place. And Fred responds saying, I don't know about beautiful, but it's going to be big. Come to think of it, I don't know if I missed it or not, do we even know what they're building here? We then see a shot of the Riverdale town sign, which always makes me laugh because the town slogan seems to be a town with pep, and I'm pretty sure they should probably change that slogan by now, because I don't know how much pep I've actually ever seen in this show, except maybe that one pep rally. It should just be like Riverdale, a town of secrets, or Riverdale, a web of lies, or Riverdale, turn back now. Now we see the gang sitting in the common room at school, and Betty is talking about how Paulie thinks no one wants her baby, and how the Blossoms want the baby but not Paulie, but the Coopers want Paulie and not the baby, and everything is just so complicated. But then there's a moment that I just busted up laughing because I don't know if it's actually scripted or if it was just the flub that happened to make it in the episode, because maybe there wasn't another take of it.
Come on, an impossible situation is being invited to the Vanity Fair Oscar party and Elton John's Oscar party on the same night.
That's right. She said Vanity Flair instead of Vanity Fair. Like, if I was in that scene and it wasn't meant to be there, I think I would have just lost it. And Camila Mendez, who plays Veronica, was live tweeting the show, and she even tweeted out, also, when's the next Vanity Flair party and how do I get invited? That makes me actually think that this is just happens to be a mistake that she said, but they kept it in there, and I kind of love that they kept it in the episode. Now, back to Veronica and the gang. Veronica is like, you know what would make this whole thing better, this whole situation? Let's throw Paulie a baby shower. Jughead then chimes in, asking if he's supposed to come to the baby shower, and Veronica says, well, of course, you're Betty's boyfriend, and then cue this kind of jealous Archie look over in the corner again. It seems like he's, shocked to hear the boyfriend. It looks like he's shocked to hear the B word come out of someone's mouth relating to Betty and Jughead, and it's really dude, you had your chance with Betty. Stop being jealous, stop looking like you're shocked. Because Betty seems pretty happy that someone brought up the B word. Anyway, Alice then barges into the common room at the school because it seems like the parents can just enter this school whenever they want to. And she says that she needs to talk to Betty and Veronica, now. Now before we get to that, we actually shift gears to Fred, whose crew has basically quit on him the day of the groundbreaking because none other than that dirty little bastard, Cliff Blossom, has offered them a better job with guaranteed work for 2 years. Now, Riverdale isn't that big, so what on earth could Cliff Blossom be building, and where is he giving these people work? Fred just looks so defeated in this scene that I just kind of want to reach through the screen and give him a hug, or maybe honestly I just kind of want to reach through the screen and give Luke Perry a hug because, you know, childhood crush right there. Now back to Alice. Turns out Sheriff Keller has told her everything that Paulie has told him about Jason and that whole plan. Now Alice is ranting, and Betty and Veronica are sitting there, and they're like, you know what, it's Paulie's choice whether she wants to keep the baby, but it's your choice whether you want to be a part of Paulie's life or not. Wow. Veronica then says, you know, hey, you should come to this baby shower, which Alice says, you know, is not appropriate, but Betty basically lays down the law saying you can either stay away or be a supportive grandma. Now, with every new episode, I just actually want to know what the F made Alice Cooper a cold-hearted bitch. But don't worry, I think part of that is actually going to be revealed in this episode, which I will get to. Now, poor Fred. He is busy trying to scramble to find guys for his crew when he finally reveals to Archie that his business is in big trouble and has been for a long time. And now Archie kind of sees an opportunity here to play the hero once again. Back at the lodge penthouse, Paulie is pretty skeptical about the baby shower too, and I mean, honestly, who wouldn't be? And Paulie is like, you know, if we're gonna have this baby shower, I want the Blossoms to also be invited, and not just Cheryl, but Mrs. Blossom too. Now, World War III might actually happen when the Blossom and Coopers come face to face at this thing, and I'm not gonna lie, I actually really want to see that. And of course, Hermione is also hearing all of this, and she doesn't want either of the mothers in their penthouse, and she's also trying to avoid the Blossoms for good reason because of the whole Hiram owns the drive-in land thing. She tells Veronica, as she pulls her aside, that Fred still doesn't know that Hiram is the buyer, and all this is just bad timing for her. And then Veronica tells Hermione that she wants her to talk to Alice Cooper to convince her to come to the baby shower, which should, of course, be very interesting. Now, by this point, Fred is steaming mad about his construction deal going sour, and he knows that, like, Cliff Blossom is the reason for all of this, so he drives his truck up into the Blossom house. Looks like he is ready to drive through their gate as Cliff Blossom is leaving. So why are the Blossoms trying to stop this whole construction on the drive-in thing? Well, everything ends up going back to that damn maple syrup business. Cliff reveals to Fred that the drive-in land used to belong to the Blossoms back in the day, and it's where the Maple Empire was founded. And they were actually in the process of buying it back when Fred's mysterious boss bought it out from under them. And since they don't know who the buyer is, they can't go after him in person, so he's basically taking down Fred in order to get to him. Because Cliff figures that the buyer must have a lot of money, some unlimited amounts of funds, so he's just going to try to stop the construction in order to bleed him dry so that he can buy the land back at a lower rate. But obviously, in turn, this dries out Fred, which gets him boiling mad. He basically yells at Cliff and says, you're drying me out too, you're taking everything away from me, which in turn takes things away from my son, and it's just a big blow up. And you know what? Fred says he's gonna go after Cliff with everything he's got, and I gotta say, attaboy, Fred, starting to grow some backbone, fighting for yourself. Fred is then back at the construction office talking to Hermione, who asks, you know, how it went with Cliff, and Fred reveals that they're kind of caught in this crossfire of an evil game. And Hermione asks if Cliff actually knows who the buyer is, and of course she's trying to kind of cover her tracks and see who knows what, but she's in the clear because neither Cliff or Fred have any idea that Hiram is the buyer. We then hear a car door, and outside we see Archie along with Moose, Kevin, Jughead, and some other guy who I don't know his name, not sure if they've said it before, but they show up kind of looking like, I feel like the village people with their, you know, hard hats and plaid shirts and construction gear, ready to lend a helping hand, of course. As always, you can rely on Kevin to steal a scene. Moving on to Hermione and Alice's awkward conversation at Pop's Diner, Alice thinks that Hermione is there to kind of gloat about how Paulie is staying with her, but really Hermione is just like, I want to help you all out. Alice is sitting there saying she just wants her family back together, but Paulie is just a teenager and is ruining her life. Hermione ends up saying, just come to the shower and be there for Paulie or you'll regret it. Does anybody else at this point kind of really want to know what happened between Hermione and Alice back in the day? Now next, I feel like cue the sexy music. Now why? Because we see the boys at work doing construction. We play a little work from home behind them. Now, since we don't get any shirtless Archie in this episode, Jughead in a tank top will just have to do. So the guys finish up their work for the day, and along with Fred, they head back into the office. And then Moose says, he forgot his phone, so he runs back out to get his phone from the work site when he walks up on two dudes with crowbars trying to bang up Fred's construction equipment. Moose says, hey, get away from that, and that's when they attack him. The rest of the gang hears something and they rush out to Moose's side. Sheriff Keller then shows up, and Fred brings up that he thinks maybe Cliff Blossom has something to do with this. But Sheriff Keller says he doubts someone like Cliff Blossom would do that. Like, really, Sheriff? Don't tell me you're under the Blossom spell here. Archie then butts in saying maybe it was the Southside Serpents because this is their territory, and Jughead quickly jumps in saying, nah, it couldn't be them. Like, I've never had a problem with them when I worked here. They didn't mess with me. It's like, no shit, Jughead. Sheriff Keller then asks Moose if he remembered seeing anything that could identify them as serpents, and Moose says no because it was dark, it all happened so fast. And Sheriff Keller then, just to, I feel like, appease Fred and everyone, says that he'll talk to the Blossoms, but he doesn't think it'll go anywhere. So I have a feeling he won't even talk to them at all. And that's when Archie calls bullshit, saying if Cliff Blossom was the one asking the sheriff for help, he wouldn't hesitate. So up until this point, I've actually thought good things about Sheriff Keller. I thought he was one of the few good, honest people left in Riverdale. But after this whole conversation, I'm not quite sure. There seemed to be something off with him. And he's pretty quick to defend the Blossoms. But he also doesn't seem like he wants to help anyone. Like, has he actually gotten anywhere on Jason Blossom's case since his whole murder board was destroyed? What is he really doing all day? Back to Paulie, Veronica, and Betty, who are all hanging out again. Paulie asks if they've heard from Alice, and Veronica says that, well, she's invited, but she hasn't actually said that she'll come yet. Betty says if Mom doesn't want to come, it's her loss. And then Paulie sweetly asks Betty to be her baby's godmother because she says she's the only one she can trust to take care of the baby if something happens to her. Next, we see Archie basically on a mission because he's so pissed that no one is doing anything to help out his dad. So he leaves poor Val sitting in his room and runs off to Pop's where he finds Jughead, Betty, and Veronica. It looks like Jughead has been avoiding Archie's texts, and we all know why, but no one else seems to. Archie says that he and Moose are going to the south side to find the serpents at this bar because Archie's pretty convinced that they're the ones who beat up Moose. He says Kevin's boyfriend, Joaquin, remember that guy he made up with at the drive-in, says that they can get him into the bar. And at this point, Jughead is like, looking like he's about to throw up. And Betty's all like, you guys shouldn't go there, they're dangerous, they're drug dealers and all this. And then this is now news to Jughead, who's like, I'm sorry, what did you say? And then Betty says, remember Paulie and the drugs in Jason's car? And Archie is determined to do something, so he's trying to get Jughead to come with him. But Jughead is, of course, trying to talk Archie out of it and trying to avoid this whole situation. And when Archie says if he's coming, Jughead just kind of stays silent and looks up at Archie. And then Archie says, man, thanks for having my back. Ouch. Now, is this what's related to the nightmare that Jughead had in the last episode where we saw the, classic Archie comic stuff play out, where Archie had a knife in his back and said to Jughead, you stabbed me in the back? Is this the stabbing in the back that was foreshadowed, or is there going to be something else later on? Archie, Moose, Kevin, and Joaquin are now at this bar on the south side, and Archie says, if you see the guys that jumped Moose, as soon as we see him, we're gonna leave and call Sheriff Keller right away. Now, we all know this is definitely a bad plan, but little Archie, he's just so determined to get justice for his dad that I honestly probably would have done the same thing if I was in his shoes. You gotta protect your family. But, just a little bit of advice there, Archie. If you're trying to sneak into a bar where you're definitely underage, don't wear your high school letterman's jacket. You literally stick out like a sore thumb. So the guys are playing some pool when Moose thinks that he might see someone who attacked him, and without hesitation, Archie marches up to the guy, grabs his shoulder from behind, and a fight breaks out. And then you hear someone's voice basically saying for everything to stop, and he's coming down the stairs, and it turns out to be FP, who is now face to face with Archie. FP then walks the guys out of the bar and he tells them to go home, but he tells Archie to stay. And Archie explains to him that he's looking for the guys that were trying to wreck his dad's work site. And now Archie's wheels are turning, and now he thinks that maybe this whole thing was personal and FP's payback for Fred laying him off. But FP's quick to defend himself, saying, why would I wait this long to get back at Fred? Life's too short for that. And then we see Fred drive up, and FP says, I called your dad as soon as I saw you walk into this bar. Now, taking a break from this whole heated action of the bar scene, we go to the baby shower, where sweet Jughead is helping set up, and we get a cute Bughead moment, and then Alice Cooper arrives. Now the party is really starting. Now, for someone who's been wanting her mom at this baby shower the whole time, I don't think Paulie looked too thrilled to actually see Alice there. Or maybe she's just nervous the whole time. But Alice says that she's happy that Paulie and the baby are safe. And then there's a hug when Cheryl makes a grand entrance, pushing an old school baby carriage that's actually really expensive, with Mrs. Blossom and my favorite Nana Rose in tow. Now, Cheryl makes a joke, but you obviously know that she is not joking, telling Paulie that she wants to be the baby's godmother. And then Mrs. Blossom also comes up to Paulie and apologizes. Now, back to the bar, Fred is talking to FP and he's like, oh, you're a serpent now. And FP responds, no one would hire me after I got laid off, and I had to make a living. FP then says there's no way that the serpents would come after Fred, especially with him in charge, because he knows everything that Fred's done for Jughead, and he would never do that to Fred. He then asks Fred how bad everything is, and kind of offers to ask around to see if he can find out anything about who did this to him. But then he also tells Fred, you should really keep an eye on that son of yours. And of course, Fred turns around and Archie is no longer in his truck and he's run off. Now, honestly, this show is usually pretty heavy with a lot of things going on, so I'm happy when there's ever any comic relief moments, which usually come from Kevin. Wish he had one earlier, but this time it's really kind of coming from Nana Rose, and I could use more of her on this show. I'd be open for a spin-off with Kevin and Nana Rose, maybe some tea time or something. Anyway, we see Nana Rose at the baby shower holding some kind of crystal necklace, hovering it over Paulie's hands. And she says that this necklace will read the baby's aura and predict the sex of the baby. Then Nana says something that shocks everyone and says, basically, Paulie, you're gonna have twins, one of each sex. Now, I'm not quite sure how far along Paulie is in her pregnancy, but I don't think she looks quite big enough for twins. But how crazy would that be if Nana Rose was actually right? Now, as Paulie is opening her presents, including an old kind of creepy baby nightlight that Alice brought her as a gift, Archie busts in and confronts Jughead, accusing him of lying to him to protect FP. Archie then basically announces to everyone that Jughead's dad is a serpent, and Jughead says he can explain, but not before Veronica steps in to make Archie leave because she's like, dude, you're ruining Paulie's day, get out. Back to Paulie's gift opening. As she continues to open her presents, including what the Blossoms brought her, Cheryl once again brings up that Paulie should come stay with them, and Mrs. Blossom is like, yes, you always have an open invitation. This, of course, is the trigger that we needed for Alice Cooper to get worked up, and the two of them start to go at it. And at this point, I'm busting out the popcorn. I am ready for some kind of UFC match fight to go down, but unfortunately, Paulie steps in saying, that's enough. Kind of a buzzkill. She then says that all of this is why Jason is dead, which honestly could be very true. I mean, things didn't work out so well for Romeo and Juliet with their families fighting. After everyone has left the baby shower, Alice is still over helping clean up, and Alice and Paulie then have a talk, and Alice tries to blame things on Mrs. Blossom, but Paulie says, you know what, that's not the woman who sent me away. You did. Ouch, way to twist that dagger into Alice's heart just a little bit more. Paulie then says, if she hadn't been sent away, Jason would probably still be alive. Alice says she just wants Paulie to come home. Then Paulie's like, well, what about Dad? And then she drops a bombshell saying, is he going to try to make another doctor's appointment for me? And this is honestly the first time we've ever kind of seen Alice in the dark, because she goes, what kind of appointment? And Paulie reveals that when Hal, her dad, found out that she was pregnant, he made an appointment with the doctor for Paulie to basically get an abortion, and said that he was happy to pay for it because she shouldn't be living with her mistake. Cue that pissed Alice look that I would honestly never want to see in real life. We then go to a scene with Fred and Archie at the house, discussing the legacies and having understanding time, whatever. And then we go to see Jughead apologizing to Betty back at the baby shower, saying he should have told her about his dad, but he was ashamed. And then I kind of honestly threw up in my mouth a little bit because Betty then calls Jughead Juggy. And honestly, I still am not sure what I think about this relationship. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't, sometimes it seems a little forced. But in all honesty, I do like seeing a new side of Jughead. I like seeing him be happy and kind of smiling and telling jokes and not the usual brooding dude that we saw in the first few episodes. Betty says if they're going to be together, she needs to know who he is and all of it. And Jughead agrees, and then Betty says, maybe we should go talk to your dad to see if he knows anything about Jason's murder. So the two arrive at FP's trailer where Jughead says that they know that the Serpents had some kind of thing going on with Jason. Some kind of drug thing because Paulie told them. And FP says, yeah, you're right. Jason needed money to get away, and since he was the clean-cut football player, no one would really suspect him of running drugs, so they agreed to help him out if he helped them out. FP then says, I never told any of this to the cops, and of course I'm pretty sure that's just to save his own ass. And now, when the product that Jason had was never delivered, FP and the Serpents just assumed that he ran off with the stash. That is, until Jason's body was found. FP then asks, is there anything else you want to ask me? So Jughead just lays it out straight, saying, did you have anything to do with Jason's death? To which FP responds with, do you really think that I could do that? I kind of do. Jughead says he doesn't know what to think anymore, and FP says he knows he's not been the perfect father, but he is no killer. Then there's kind of this look, though, on FP's face when he's saying all this that makes me kind of not believe him. It also just might be Skeet Ulrich who plays FP's face because, I'm used to seeing him play killers and things like Scream, so maybe that's just why I immediately jumped to the fact that maybe he did it. As Betty and Jughead are leaving, Jughead tells Betty that he believes his dad, and then Betty says, I believe you, Jughead. So does this mean that she doesn't fully believe the whole story? It's an interesting choice of words. Then, of course, there's another kiss, complete with a romantic sunset-y type whatever, lens flare, whatever you call it, because, nothing says let's have a moment like this like realizing your dad didn't kill anyone. So now, we're starting to get to the juicy stuff, because that always happens towards the end of the episode. We see Hal Cooper at home, sitting in the dark watching a baseball game, when Alice Cooper storms in looking like she is just ready to cut a bitch. So she grabs the remote and throws it and demands to know what he said to Paulie when he found out that she was pregnant, and she brings up the appointment. Now Hal is trying to act all innocent and dumb, but now Alice is just starting to get physical, pushing him, yelling at him, calling him names, and then she says, you did to Paulie exactly what you did to me. Say what? Hal then says, that's why I didn't involve you, because you'd overreact. I'm sorry, Alice Cooper overreact? Never. So we basically learned that when Hal and Alice were teenagers, she got pregnant, and well, it seems like he took care of that too. Because they were kids and they weren't ready, and neither is Paulie. And he says he doesn't want Paulie to be ruined by that mistake. In other words, the baby. Alice then says, what, Paulie is moving home, and Hal is like, oh hell she is. He doesn't want to be party to raising a child that has Blossom blood in it. Alice then essentially tells him to get out before she does something they both regret, and then she says, by now, you know what I'm capable of. And Hal goes, well, but what will people think? And Alice says she doesn't care anymore, get out. Okay, hold up though. So what has Alice done in the past? Like, why would she say these things? What is she capable of? And what has she done? We definitely know she can be pushed to the edge to be doing some crazy things, but maybe could she be pushed as far as to murder? And like with what Hal said about like what will people think of you, Alice is definitely worried about something about her image. I don't know. I do have to hand it to Machen Amick, who did a great job in this scene. And honestly, I love seeing this kind of new vulnerable side, this human side of Alice Cooper, because up until now, she's really just been portrayed as a cold-hearted bitch. It's like, while you may not actually like her, at least now we know part of what makes her the way she is. And part of me was even driven to kind of want to give her a hug. So honestly, let's hope that this side of Alice kind of sticks around for a bit, because I like seeing nice Alice. Back at the Andrews house, Jughead walks into Archie's room saying he's sorry and he should have trusted him, but he was afraid that his dad and the Serpents were really actually doing all this messed up stuff, and he didn't want to believe it because, well, it's his dad. Archie says, you know, dude, I get it, but you can also talk to me about anything, and then they kind of have this little brotherly moment. Now, remember when I said that FP kind of had this look on his face like he was definitely leaving some truth out of everything he was telling Jughead? Well, that's because it's kind of true. We go back to FP's trailer where we see him talking to someone, and he's packing up Jason's Letterman jacket in a bag, saying, you know, the heat is on right now, and this jacket is our insurance in case everything goes to hell. We need to keep it safe, and if something goes bad, we can give it to Sheriff Keller as our insurance. And then we see that he's actually indeed talking to Joaquin, Kevin's boyfriend, or should I say, boyfriend. Yeah, that's right. Joaquin is just pretending that this whole Kevin thing so that he can keep an inside line with the sheriff. And it's like, poor Kevin. Joaquin even says that Kevin thinks that this is all real, and FP laughs, saying, we all have our part to play, including me. Damn it, FP, so what part are you sitting here playing? Are you just playing your own son? Because that's just cruel. And also, how is Jason's jacket insurance? Like, if anything, this points to you guys burning the car, and I don't really see how that would help you unless there's some other kind of information you're holding on to. The next day, we see Fred and Hermione at work, and Hermione's saying, you know, I've got calls out to crews, we're trying to find you people. And when they walk up onto the job site, they see FP there with his gang of serpents ready to work, hard hats and all. And FP says, you know, to Fred, you've never had a better foreman than me, and my crew is always looking for work, and I wouldn't leave you hanging. Fred then is like, you know, but what if there's trouble? And FP's like, come on, dude, we're like a gang, we can handle trouble. We then see FP walking away with Hermione, and he's saying to her, those guys who attacked Moose, it turns out they weren't local. And Hermione's a little confused at first. She's like, why are you telling me this? But here's the kicker. FP reveals that the guy he got the info from says that he knows the guys who did the attack because they did a stint up north in Montreal, which, dun dun dun, puts them in Hiram's territory. And FP suggests that maybe Hiram got wind of her romance with little Fred and is trying to get back at them. He then says the real question is who ratted you out to Hiram? Uh-oh. To be honest, we never heard what Hermione told Hiram on that phone call that Veronica made her do. So, did she actually tell Hiram about Fred, and did this whole thing just backfire on her? If she didn't, did Veronica innocently tell Hiram about Fred? And if not her, then who did it? Now the episode is wrapping up, and we see Betty talking to Paulie again, and Betty assures Paulie that Alice never heard anything about what Dad did to her. So Paulie's kind of shocked that Alice has actually kicked Hal out of the house, and Betty says, Mom meant everything she said, and you can come home now. We then see Paulie get out of a cab, and she's oddly enough by herself, and dun dun dun, she's being dropped off at Thornhill, the home of the Blossoms. Yeah, she's not going home to Alice Cooper. Did you see that coming? Because I kind of didn't. Cut to poor Alice Cooper, who is sitting at home alone when Betty walks in crying, saying she's sorry that she really tried, and then Alice breaks down in Betty's arms. And then the Blossoms, we see them greet Paulie at the house, saying that they're glad that she's there, and Paulie's honestly just like, I'm just doing this for my baby. And Mrs. Blossom tells Paulie that she'll be safe there, but that look on Mrs. Blossom's face when she closes the door behind Paulie has me thinking otherwise. Like, I'd be running for the hills. Like, that family just gives me shivers. So basically, to sum up this episode, everyone now knows FP's a serpent. He's definitely hiding some kind of information about Jason. Hiram seems to be out to get Fred, maybe, and Cliff Blossom is out to get the mysterious buyer, which in turn is also getting back at Fred. Alice has kicked Hal out of the house. We know there's something in her past and that she can maybe take drastic measures, and she's trying to cover up something as well. I don't know what. And now Paulie is living with the Blossoms, but is she honestly really that safe? I enjoyed this episode because I felt like we are really now diving deep into everybody's secrets, mainly, obviously, the parents. I'm not sure if we're actually moving, though, closer to finding out who murdered Jason, but we are uncovering some pretty juicy stuff. And honestly, at this point, I kind of feel like everyone could have murdered Jason. So what's in store for next week? Roll the promo.
Every year we host a tradition that honors the Blossom bloodline. Want to be my date?
You two make quite the pair.
The Blossoms are buying you.
You know we can be extremely generous to the right people.
I'm sick of you people using me and my family as pawns.
The Blossom Empire is crumbling.
Don't think for a second that the Blossoms are looking out for you.
Okay, I'm starting to feel like the Blossoms are kind of like their own little cult here. Like, it's kind of scary, and now they're digging their claws into poor Archie. Like, why would Archie be seduced by Cheryl and agree to be his date to this thing if he's with Val? Well, we do see Val saying to him, the Blossoms are trying to buy you. But how? Are they buying him with money? Are they buying him with stuff? Honestly, are they just trying to maybe pit Archie against his dad in order to get that drive-in land back? We also see Alice with Betty, and Alice throws a brick through the door of the newspaper where Hal is. He looks pretty damn shocked. There's also a quick glimpse of what looks like Veronica breaking down over what? I have no idea yet. We see Betty and Jughead hug, and then, ew, there's a Cheryl and Archie kiss. I just feel like the Blossoms are trying to recruit Archie into their family as replacement for Jason, which is kind of creepy. So I'm kind of excited to meet the rest of this Blossom extended family in this next episode. I feel like they're just gonna be so interesting, and I hope some of them are like Nana Rose and just funny, but I have a feeling it's probably just gonna be way more dramatic than that. Okay, so now it is time to hit me up in the comments or on my social media with your thoughts on this episode. Were you as shocked to see this new side of Alice Cooper as I was? What's she hiding? How is FP playing everyone? Did he kill Jason? Or does he know who killed Jason? Also, any new theories on who the hell killed Jason? I feel like they're trying to make you feel like all signs are pointing to FP and his gang, but as always, I feel like that's just way too obvious. Like with this show, I honestly kind of feel like everyone we've met so far is just too obvious. Maybe it's Sheriff Keller. He kind of got a little shady in this episode. Or someone we wouldn't suspect, like maybe Moose or something. Also, remember when Jughead said in an episode that the coach's son and the players who got kicked off the football team would have consequences on people? We haven't really seen any of that yet, right? So maybe somehow that's involved with everything? Maybe the murder, maybe this is all just a game of misdirect, and the murderer is someone we've briefly met but would never suspect, right? This is why I am not a detective. Usually I'm actually kind of good at figuring this kind of stuff out when I'm watching a movie or something, but this show just has my brain twisted and all confused, and I honestly now think everybody murdered Jason. Anyway, leave me your thoughts, and then you can check out more of my videos right over here, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet. If you have subscribed, high five to you, as always, and be sure to hit that little bell for all the notifications. As always, I'm Lisa, and peace out.